Message of love for those who blame the government for everything. Truly, the easiest and simplest thing to do is to blame others, and of course, who better than politicians and the government and the authorities and the law? This message is for those who live justifying themselves by blaming and making responsible the government and public officials, from the president of the country to the street sweeper. Vainly, we believe that the government has to do everything for us. We think that because we've given our vote to this or that party, or delegate, or senator, they have an obligation to do everything for us. Now let's ask ourselves a question. Who is the government? Or rather, what is a government made of? Before graduates and lawyers, well-documented university students, etc., governments are made up by people, meaning simple mortals and insignificant human beings like us who live blaming the government for all of our problems and miseries. The truth is that the government is not God, and the politicians, police, and the judges are only human beings in need of pure love and true justice. Like you and me, who have a habit of pointing to the authorities as responsible for all the injustice that afflicts the world. Oh yes, the world is full of injustice, theft, crimes, pedophilia, and pornography, wars, terrorism, and drug trafficking. It goes on and on. In this world, our countries are a cradle for evil and corruption, and the government and governments and politicians are to blame. This is absurd and an unfair way to judge and think. Truly, how easy, how cowardly, how cynical of us to blame the government of our own injustice and lack not only of civility, but of simple love to our fellow man. This is a message to those who have found the way and the perfect excuse to escape their own responsibility before society, blaming mom and dad government, claiming from it what it could never give us. What is the government? Rather, for what is the government set up for? Basically speaking, governments serve as a guarantee, protection and security, ministry of justice and welfare. It has to pursue and to ensure justice and peace, and also health and education to all citizens. Government, as we believe and assume, should do everything for us for the simple reason that we see the government as God, sovereign, and we forget that the system of human government is absurd on many levels. Again, the rulers and the authorities of this world are only human beings, by nature unable to fulfill their promises, like you and me, who live blaming the law and the government for everything. Maybe you think, and I'm sure that if you, critical of the government, were in their place, you would do things better than them. This is typical of the detractors of the government and public officials, meaning of those who blame the government for all their misfortunes. With this thinking, which is in a greater or lesser extent rooted in each of us, we will not get very far as individuals or as a community or a country. We cannot keep blaming others for what we all have to do. It's nonsense to put our trust and expectations in the monstrous entity that is the government, which is everything and yet it's nobody. Of course, I do not speak of the rulers or of any human being within it. They also, as critics of the government, are caught in the fallacy called human government, hoping what is impossible will become possible. Some of us refer to this as hopium. Rulers and the ruled both think that a government made by humans can emanate true justice, peace, and equality. Perhaps you think what I'm saying is too radical. However, from another point of view, what I'm trying to say is simple and realistic. It's not crazy to want to find all these things in something as unstable as the government. Human government will proceed with its inherent imperfection. The problem is not in the government, but it's in us who blame others, in this case, the government. Brother and sister who live blaming and waiting for the government, Stop complaining to those who cannot help you. Stop demanding from those who are lacking justice and peace and love, just like you and me. Let's be sensible. Go to the one who can give us justice and peace and love. Maybe you think I'm ridiculous, but if you're tired of complaining and manifesting yourself day and night against the work that others are doing while you remain a spectator, judge of others, listen to these words with faith. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how they might entangle him in his talk. And they sent to him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true, and teach the way of God in truth, nor do you care about anyone, for you do not regard the person of men. Tell us, therefore, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why do you test me, you hypocrites? Show me the tax money. So they brought him a denarius. And he said to them, Whose image and inscription is this? They said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. When they had heard these words, they marveled, and they left him, and they went their way. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God, and those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Do you want to be unafraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For he is God's minister to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is God's minister, an avenger to execute wrath on him who practices evil. Therefore, you must be subject not only because of wrath, but also for conscience sake. For because of this you also pay taxes. For they are God's ministers, attending continually to this very thing. Render therefore to all their due, taxes to whom taxes are due, customs to whom customs, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor. For those who have ears, let them hear.